president. He has made certain comments which have been received with outrage. He told guests at a private campaign event that COVID-19 was ethnically targeted bioweapon that spared Chinese and Ashkenazi Jews. And the good news is that he has been adopted by my least favorite Orthodox rabbi in America, whose name is Shmuley Boteach, Boteach. I never learned how to pronounce it, but he was Michael Jackson's rabbi. He is, oh God, this is being recorded, so I'm going to watch my language.
Yes.
But whatever you were thinking I was going to say, I was going to say it. Now, Shmuley, rabbi, that's his name. Shmuley, rabbi to the stars, had a television interview with Robert Kennedy Jr., at which time Kennedy denied that he said that. The fact that it's on tape and has been shown all over the world, that shouldn't bother anybody. Okay, so that's Robert F. Kennedy and Shmuley, two of my newest favorite people. The next thing, as a quickie, Risa and I, Ron and Beth, went to see Oppenheimer. And it was almost 3 hours. Not going to review it. We thought it was fabulous. One of the things that's interesting about it is the Jewish aspect. The movie makes it really clear that the Jewish aspect of quantum physics and the making of the atomic bomb, very significant. The two protagonists, Oppenheimer, and on the other side, Robert Strauss. You might have pronounced it Strauss, but he didn't like that. He wanted to be Strauss, Robert Strauss, who, among other things, was president of Temple Emmanuel of New York and chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. And so these two Jews, Oppenheimer and Strauss, were going at each other. But there's so much beyond that. Edward Teller is involved hugely in the debate and the fight and disagreeing with Oppenheimer. He was Jewish also. One of the great scenes in the movie is Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein hanging out in Princeton, chatting next to a pond. Needless to say, Albert Einstein, Jewish. And we just go on from there. Isidore Rabi, others, there were so many, not to make an extraordinarily big deal out of it, but I spent a lot of time afterwards talking about this with our 16-year-old granddaughter, and it's just a phenomenon which at least partially was created by the Nazi takeover in Germany, driving certain groups of scientists out to freedom, and they were Jewish. Okay, so the atomic age was ushered in by Jews. I don't even want to mention that there are those who connect Karl Marx And communism played a very, very big deal. There were so many, and I'm sitting there and feeling really proud and kind of upset at the same time. There is that. I have to tell you, Robert Downey Jr. portrayed Louis Strauss, and he was fabulous. He was fabulous, even better than when he portrayed Iron Man. Okay, if you don't get that reference, I'm sorry. If you don't follow superheroes, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you this. These were the front pages of 4 Israeli newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
How about that?
Can't read it.
We can't read it.
There's nothing to read. They're black.
Oh. Okay.
They're black. In other words, 4 of Israel's largest newspapers published an edition after the vote, and all that was a blackened page, not a blank, a blackened page.
That's interesting that they all published the same thing. That reflects what happened on the day the state was proclaimed.
I think there
That
are.
is also true. The date the state was proclaimed, everyone ran the same first page cover page. That is true. Now,
These were ads, I think, advertisements.
I'm sorry I didn't hear you.
I think these were paid advertisements, what I read.
It says advertisement.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I think it's really good.
Mhm.
And they could have run an advertisement that went like this, and they didn't. And that's a good thing. Now, responses. The Reform Movement sent out a release on July 25th. And a sad day. I'm not going to read it all because they describe, we vehemently condemn the strong-arm tactics of the current coalition. Divisive legislation imperils Israel's democracy. Connected to Tisha B'Av. Rabbi Gilad Kariv, we lost this battle, but we will win in the end, and a call for action. The nice thing is there is a list of signatories of everyone who is anyone except me, who are heads of various organizations within the Reform Movement, all signed on to that letter of condemnation, both in the United States and Canada. Bret Stephens, who is Jewish, who writes a column for the New York Times, who is a recovering Republican, and that's how he describes himself, looking for a way back to vote for his party. He does not call himself anything other. He is an angry Republican. Bret Stephens wrote, Israel has no written constitution delineating separation of powers. It has no meaningful institutional check on the executive and legislature outside of the Supreme Court. If you diminish the power of the Supreme Court, you are placing dictatorial power into the hands of the government, which is the legislative and executive branch, which are one in the Israeli system. The executive branch prime minister heads the majority party in the Knesset. So the executive and the legislative are one. The only break on their unlimited power is the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court has now, and remember, we're not finished discussing, has now been crippled. I see two. Harv, Sukasa.
My question is, can't the Supreme Court just throw out this law that they just passed?
Mm.
The reason I
And why
wanted
wouldn't they do that?
the reason I wanted to wait is chronologically, the Supreme Court has now indicated that it is taking up this piece of legislation as being potentially violative of the corpus of Israeli law. So that won't happen until September. In the meanwhile, the law is in effect. Sukasa and then Michael.
Two questions. Is there any movement, or do you think it's at all realistic that they might write a constitution, number one? And what about civil war? And what would civil war look like?
That's all you want to know. What will civil war look like? What's interesting, Sukasa, is that at the time of the vote, everyone not part of the governing coalition walked out of the Knesset.
Mm-hmm.
So that left it naked. There are 64 members of the governing coalition. The vote was 64-0. People were looking for signs that maybe some softness would occur in the coalition. It did not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I mean, we're reading tea leaves. That's a tea leaf. Secondly, the chance of such a radically divided Knesset could come together even on certain additional basic laws to build toward a constitution is extremely remote now. That's why I mentioned the 64. They firmly supported this. There is a move by the Israel Democracy Institute to push forward more basic laws which would create legal divisions separating legislative, executive, and judicial. That's not going to happen now. So the question is, I want to say that the IMPJ yesterday, the Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism, had a webinar which is still up and available. And that webinar had Josh Weinberg, Vice President of the URJ, head of ARTSA, Rick Jacobs. It had the former chair of the URJ. It had, I'm missing Risa.
Orly.
They had the head of the Religious Action Center and the head of the IMPJ. Everybody was there. And folks, an hour, 6 minutes long, it was one of the best such activities I've seen. All gloves were off. They spoke from their hearts, passion. It wasn't dry. So if you want to go to the IMPJ, Israel Movement for Progressive Judaism, pick up the webinar. It's an hour, 6 minutes, well worth it. Michael.
I have two questions also. The first one would be, even in the case that the Supreme Court ruled that the law could not stand, is there any reason to think that the government would abide by it? It sounds like it would be basically a clash of views on whether the court even had the power to make that decision once the law had been enacted.
That's where Sue Cosa's question really comes up.
Yeah, yeah.
Because there is no question that the governing coalition will not accept the ruling of the Supreme Court. There is a reasonable chance that the Supreme Court will rule it whatever, unconstitutional, whatever it has to do. That reality potentially has a good side if it then empowers Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel, to call the sides together in August and say, folks, we are headed to civil war. Is this what you want? Maybe his negotiations up until now, well intended,
Haven't done anything.
nothing happened. This time, Michael's question, Sukasa's concern, will be on everyone's lips. And maybe that will be pressure. Folks, if it doesn't, I can only promise you there will be chaos. Now, I don't want to promise beyond that point, but there will be chaos. Do I see any other hands? Okay, I'm going to go forward. The Israel Medical Association went on strike to protest the resolution's adoption. But this is a Jewish state. What does a doctor's strike look like in a Jewish state? They went on their reduced Shabbat coverage. They can't close the hospitals on Shabbat. So there is a system whereby doctors rotate in, even with Shabbat, to do medical coverage. So it wasn't that they shut, yes, I laughed. It was nice. You could do a shutdown, which isn't a shutdown, and then they had to reopen. The strike was declared by the ministry, health ministry, and the labor court as illegal. Okay. While this is going on, the ultra-Orthodox United Torah Judaism Party, after the resolution was passed, the United Torah Judaism, UTJ, proposed a new basic law. I'm going to read it in English. It's called Basic Law Torah Study. Clause 1, Torah study is a supreme value in the heritage of the Jewish people. Okay? Yeah. Okay, basic law, we're in favor of Torah study. Second clause, the state of Israel as a Jewish state views the encouragement of Torah study and Torah students as utmost important, and regarding their rights and duties, here it comes, those who dedicate themselves to studying Torah for an extended period should be viewed as having served a significant service to the state of Israel and the Jewish people. In English, even though this was English, if you're in yeshiva, you are automatically exempt from military service universally, which has never been accepted by the Knesset. Never. The reaction to the timing and the content was fury. And surprisingly, Bibi, feeling he has enough on his plate, told the UTJ to withdraw their proposal. The chutzpah to put this forward at such a time lets you know what is always true. The Orthodox parties are in the Knesset for two reasons: to impose Jewish halakha by the strictest understanding on everyone in Israel, and secondly, to increase funding for all Orthodox institutions. Now, Michael had asked, is there a way forward? These people will never leave the coalition. They have gotten millions of new dollars in the past couple of months. Millions. On the agenda is to reverse all of the gains that the reform movement has made over the past few years. It's out there. They want to withdraw government support for any reform institutions. They want to withdraw government recognition of anything that a reform rabbi does. They want to withdraw anything that, for example, the law that prohibits the defacing of women's pictures on campaign posters. There is a law because the Orthodox were defacing them. That law will be challenged. There are more. In other words, this resolution that was adopted this week is only the beginning, and not because I'm a fearmonger, but because it's in writing already what the intentions are. Now, no new resolution. The Knesset is going on summer recess the end of this week, whatever. And there'll be no new resolutions coming up until after Simchat Torah, until after the holidays are over. That's when all of this will break open. That gives Herzog a chance, and that gives American Jews a chance. And Risa, what's your point?
At the book club last night, the Wilshire Boulevard Book Club, we were discussing a book that involved the Declaration of Independence. And the question came up, what difference does it make to us if these laws change, what should we care about it? And my thought, and I want to see if you challenge me or not, my thought was that when these laws change, it's going to affect us in the United States because the ultra-Orthodox here will use it as an excuse to interfere with our conversion practices and allowing our converts to get married and or to get a get or anything like that. That it's not over there, it's over here too. Am I too far out?
No, but it's bigger than that, Risa. On the next day, Tuesday, I wrote a letter to all of my friends who were signatories on the Reform Leadership Letter. That means I didn't write it to everyone. Probably 75% I would consider to be personal friends. And so I wrote a letter to personal friends saying, while all this battle is going on, we are losing American Jewry right and left. I called them to institute programs that would bring Jews together in positive environments to come to understand the Declaration of Independence. It was a specific recommendation. Let this year be devoted to a study of the Declaration of Independence. Let Jews gather in book clubs, in study groups, in whatever, to examine the details in the presence of scholars or academics who can help us through the language, and come to an understanding as to what the founders of Israel had in mind. If we can give this language to our people, they will be better equipped, I said, to push back against the anti-Israel growing feeling. I've had 4 answers so far, 4 positive answers. I am saying this to you because of your connections with Sisterhood, with Wilshire Boulevard, with the Academy, with whatever. We need to find ways to bring Jews together in a comfortable environment to thoughtfully look at what the Declaration of Independence says, how it came to be written, what dreams these founding Zionists have. So when we are engaged in battle over the fate of Israel, we have the weapons of knowledge, not vitriol, not yelling, not debate. This is what the Declaration of Independence says. Now, it is totally self-serving for me to say that John Rosoff, Rabbi John Rosoff, and I wrote a book published 3 years ago, totally devoted to this, and would make a superb study guide. Folks, forget it. I don't give a damn whether the book sells for you or anyone else. But the study needs to be done. Michael.
So I don't know in the normal course of things when the next general election would be held, but is it possible that 3 years? Is it possible that via strikes, further, I understand there are also reservist strikes and possibly general strikes, and the pressure from American Jewry that you mentioned and so forth. Is there any chance that any of that could add up to a election happening sooner than that?
Almost every Israeli government has fallen before the 4 years for a variety of reasons. There is great history, if you will, Michael, on the governments not surviving for a variety, budget, or this or that, whatever, they fall. So there is no expectation that this government is going to make 4 years. It would be atypical anyway. Next, I did recommend the IMPJ webinar, and I figured I'm going to recommend it again. Gilad Kariv, rabbi, former professional head of the IMPJ, and now a member of Knesset representing the almost defunct Labor Party. But he sits on the Constitution and Law Committee. He is involved in these battles. Before the recent election, he chaired that committee, and this would never have gotten out of his committee. Now, Gilad said, whatever you do, oppose conditioning foreign aid for Israel based upon Israel's behavior. I was not altogether clear where I stood, but Gilad made the case. So while we are opposing and screaming, and I have to be in touch with Ted Lieu, who is my representative. You have to be in touch with you have to be in touch with your representatives. Thanking them, Ted Lieu, thanking for support of Israel, and asking for help in pressuring the Netanyahu government to back off. Okay, but not to condition foreign aid. Gilad's feeling is this would be a dagger in Israel's heart. Folks, Israel's budget doesn't need the amount of foreign aid, 4 billion, whatever it is. Israel's budget is healthy. The startup nation is healthy financially. The point being that once you validate the cutting off of foreign aid, you send the signal to all of Israel's enemies, Israel is vulnerable. That's all. Don't do it. And I'm going to open up for conversation. The other thing that Gilad said, besides saying, we lost this battle, accept it, we lost. And now work on saving American Jewry for Israel and saving Israel from itself. This is a terrible, terrible time. This is no time to be silent or inactive. Brad.
Yeah, Rabbi, I loved your idea of going back to the Declaration of Independence. And as part of that, I'd love to go back and try to understand how Israel, which is a relatively new country, how it developed the system that it developed. I mean, was it patterned after some other country's system? I mean, England, we know, does not have a written constitution. So from that respect, it resembles the English system, but the English system is bicameral and Israel is unicameral. So I'm just wondering, when at the birth of Israel, how did they come up with this system that they came up with?
I'm not going to be able to give you an insider fly on the wall answer, but I will tell you this, Brad. Nobody thought that the system they came up with would last more than a year. It was predicated upon the call in the Declaration of Independence for the convening of a constitutional convention, whatever. The assumption, flawed, the assumption made by Ben-Gurion and the crowd was that there would be a convention, maybe the Knesset would convene as a constitutional convention. They could do that, right? They could do that. And they would then write a constitution and work out those things. It hasn't happened yet in 85 years. 75 years, excuse me. It hasn't happened yet. So I remember being told Israel has no written constitution like the British. And people said that all over the place. God, was that untrue? We were really misled because what you mentioned, the bicameral, the House of Lords, the bicameral nature of the British government does not exist in Israel. They created a monster which for 75 years survived until Israelis following certain countries viewed veering to the far right politically as the way to go. And I'm not going to say the United States. I'll just leave it to Hungary and Italy and a few other places, okay? And the United States. Sukasa, what are you saying? I can't read your lips. What are you saying?
I'm just saying Sweden is having problems. It's not just Hungary and Italy. It's Europe, France, Le Pen. It's everywhere.
Amen. Thank you. I'm sorry I can't read your lips. So, Brad, they didn't think they'd have to worry about it. Give us a year, the state will be established. We'll have a constitutional convention. We'll worry about that. Bad guess. Next, I want to plump up my peacock feathers. I said to you, watch out for Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. Did I not say that? I don't claim prophecy, but I said that. They are now the two most important people in the Israeli government. How happy do I feel that I was right? Well, I like being right, so it's all lost. The Times of Israel editor reported, displaying a most unfamiliar attribute, weakness, Bibi gave Ben-Gvir and Smotrich immensely powerful ministerial positions, even though he knew that Smotrich is a theocrat. He wants a theocracy. And Ben-Gvir is a racist provocateur. What Monday's vote made unprecedentedly plain was that Netanyahu was not merely riding the Smotrich Ben-Gvir tiger, but that he would lead Israel towards Sukasa potential civil war rather than dismount from the tiger. I'm going to give one more comment and stop for your comments. You have been kind, but Risa, do you remember the name of the group that sponsored the march on the Brooklyn Bridge?
It begins with EX. The X, I was trying to think of it before.
Okay,
I'll try to find it.
thank you. I'd appreciate that. There were these marches in Israel, 150,000, 200,000 strong. On the weekend prior to the vote, a small group of people started out marching from Tel Aviv to the Knesset. And by the time they got to the Knesset, it was a massive march. Israelis are doing a great job in being relentless in fighting what's going on. But in the United States, on Sunday, this group, which suddenly emerged, sponsored a march in parallel with the Israel march across the Brooklyn Bridge. Risa, do you have it?
I can't find the name. I'm trying to go through Shoshana's stuff.
Okay. Just, can you go into your thing and say who sponsored march across Brooklyn Bridge?
Okay.
That'll give it to you. So this group has now been endorsed by the reform movement and by others as being the group to support in fighting what's going on. And we need to be aware. Risa will come up with the name. I'm going to stop. Share your responses. I have a lot of things here. I'm not going to do it. I need to have you talk. Share your responses. What are you feeling? What are you going to be doing? What do you want us to do? Talk with us. Who's going to come up?
Oh, sorry, I've got it. It's unacceptable.
Unacceptable. That's it. But it's not spelled.
Right.
It's
Acceptable.
unacceptable. The name of the group, unacceptable. And if there are ways that you can lend your help to that group, I will tell you it's been declared kosher by the reform movement. Okay? Gilad Kariv endorsed them openly. Okay, Herb, Sylvia?
If the law has passed and all of these various and sundry people are striking or withholding their services, even if there's not a civil war in August, what's to keep the crazies surrounding Israel from attacking, expecting not to get much defense on the part of Israel because they're busy fighting with each other within the government.
My faith in the IDF is pretty widespread, deep, and fervent. I will tell you, Sylvia, that those reservists who went on strike, mainly pilots, if there is any indication of imminent threat, they'll be back. I promise you that without any information. I promise you that because I have met with, talked with, worked with the leadership of the military in Israel for 30 years. No way they would. No, they'll be in their planes. And God save those who attempted to do the trouble, because they're going to end up dead. Yes, I have arrogant pride in the IDF, and I do not believe these pilots would for a second hesitate. But thank you for asking that. Okay, I see Brad.
We can't hear you.
Brad, we can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. Rabbi, I'm coming back to the birth of our country, where we there was, it was a struggle, but we came to some consensus. And when I look at the birth of Israel, that there was an inability to come to a consensus. And I'm wondering if that inability to come to a consensus hasn't really been the history of Israel, that there was no attempt here with this proposed change in rules to come to some kind of consensus amongst the different parties. So is that the Achilles heel of Israel?
Now I have to go back to Reese's question. What will the impact be if this continues in Israel on American Jewry? I want to point out that from an academic point of view, from creative contemporary literature, from Jewish art and Jewish music, people may be unaware of how much we are currently living off of Israel. Liturgical music, the Nobel Prize for Literature, the great authors that are producing contemporary Jewish literature. No, they're not all in Israel, but a heck of a lot of them are. The progress in biblical study, the progress in creating a new form of Judaism, which is a secular contemporary Judaism, all taking place in Israel. If Israel turns hard right, committed, ultra-Orthodox, that's gone. And we will be much the poorer. Think about the Jewish summer camps and how many shlichim, young Israeli post-army kids, forgive kids, post-army whatever, are serving as counselors in hundreds of camps. That's gone. That's gone. The support for the Jewish agency will evaporate if Israel turns to a theocracy. The loss the birthright trips, all of the contacts, the year programs, the semester programs will be gone. The American Jewish community is living in full symbiotic relationship with the Israeli Jewish community. I am not saying Israel feeds, we consume. Israel and the United States symbiotic in their growth. If this goes further, that symbiosis ends. I don't want to lecture. I want to hear you. We have 5 minutes left. Okay, please. Yes, Merle.
I was just going to say part of what you said. This was going to affect our camps, our
yes.
temples that are ascending, doing bar and bat mitzvah programs in Israel. Wilshire just did one a few months ago.
Understand what's going to happen to the egalitarian so-called section
Right.
of the culture. It's
it's
going to
gonna-
be gone.
And it's also going to affect, well, you said birthright. So all of those programs that the reform movement, actually birthright wasn't created by the reform movement, but the reform movement bought into it heavily. All
core
of these
money-
programs,
The core
Right.
money for birthright, I won't name the person, but he was a member of my congregation in New York.
oh, okay, I didn't realize that. But I mean, all of these things, Nifty will be heavily, with the Nifty programs during the summer and during the school year. So
Nifty doesn't exist anymore,
well,
but
that's true. Yeah,
the Israel programs
right.
for us. Yes, Susie.
Well, with what you're saying, and all of us in agreement, and nearly all of the American Jews in agreement, what do these people that are on the other side, what do they stand to gain? Look at all that we're talking about they're losing. What do they stand to gain from this?
Money.
Money?
Let me just be naked, it's power. They're going to own a country. They're going to own a country, and they don't care about the things that bother us. We can't let that happen. And please hear me. It's good that you raised it that way. I am confident that they will be stopped. I am confident.
What can we do as what can I do as a member of Wilshire Boulevard Synagogue? Can I send money someplace? What can I do?
First of all, look at I keep forgetting the name of the thing. The group that sponsored the bridge walk.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Okay.
I don't know. I have nothing to do with them except that if they're looking for money, send it. Send them money. Secondly, Wilshire could sponsor through Sisterhood, through Women of Wilshire, through the congregation and Susan, I don't know, could sponsor a serious, major effort to study the Declaration of Independence. They could do that, giving the people a chance to drink in the values and acquire the vocabulary so they can talk. There is stuff. And your congressperson, be in touch. Thank that person for supporting Israel. Ask that person to turn the screws on Bibi. Yes, it is time for activism. I feel energized like Soviet Jewry. I feel energized. Now we can make a difference if we decide to. Any other comments? Any other comments today? Susie, you're still up there. Oh, okay. Any other comments?
Oh.
Susie.
I feel like I want to grab a whole group of people and go stand in front of the federal building with a big sign alerting people not to be so blasé about what's going on and recognize that there are things that we could do. You know, there's power in numbers, not just one person calling the congressman.
And what Gilad said yesterday when I saw it, it was 2 days ago. If there isn't not acceptable, I'm blocked. Unacceptable. If there is not an unacceptable chapter in Los Angeles, and I don't know if there is, look around with some folks and get one started. Contact the national structure. And how do we go about supporting? You're doing God's work. We want to be with you, Risa. And you can't hear you.
I was just gonna say, we have contact with Shoshana and we can help make the connections.
No, but
Unacceptable.
They didn't list Los Angeles yesterday as having one.
But she can tell us how to get going on starting one.
Okay, so write her. Yeah, that'll
I'll call her.
Shoshana took part in the march over the George Washington Bridge, representing the women of Reform Judaism. We are there.
Was it GW or Rochelle or Brooklyn?
The Brooklyn Bridge. She was there. Women of Reform Judaism were there. We need to be there. We're going to have a busy week. Saturday morning should be excellent. In-person Torah study and a wonderful adult.
Stanley, are the protests going on between now and Sukkot or not?
Yes. At this point in Israel, they are going on. Yes, they are. Folks, this was like, I knew. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Have we mobilized the troops? Are we sending the troops out? Are you the shock troops?
Thank you. This has been amazing. We wouldn't know this if we didn't have this discussion time.
No, we wouldn't.
It's great. Thank you. I have to leave a bit early.
Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.